everyone, and welcome back to The Monthly Truth. Today, I'm joined by someone incredibly brave and so inspiring, Lydia, who's here to share her personal journey with PMDD. Lydia was officially diagnosed in 2023 after a devastating loss and a really intense period of emotional crisis, which led her to take the bold step of sectioning herself, something that in an unexpected way turned out to be a life-changing turning point. What followed was a deeper understanding of her mental health, a recognition of how her symptoms were linked to her cycle, and a diagnosis that finally made sense of years of pain and confusion. So in this episode, Lydia opens up about trauma, grief, self-harm, and the complicated path to managing PMDD, from medication to hormone therapy to support networks. She also shares how she co-founded Not Ovaryacting with her friend Jodie to raise awareness and end the stigma around PMDD. This is a really powerful, honest conversation about what it really looks like to survive and live with PMDD. So let's get into it. Hi Lydia, thank you so much for being here.
No worries, anytime.
We've been really excited for this episode. I feel like you and I have had a few conversations over Instagram, and it's just nice to finally connect and have a conversation. And what I always ask our guests on The Monthly Truth is, how would you describe PMDD?
Do you know what? I mean, the actress from Grey's Anatomy, Camilla Luddington, she has PMDD. And I didn't know if you knew this, and she described it as premenstrual depression dysphoric disorder.
PMDD.
Yeah, like basically that the way she describes it is it's just like mega depression or like manic depression. And I think that's how I would describe it. I feel like with normal depression, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. With PMDD, there is no light. It is just pure darkness.
Yeah, it's that
what I would
dysphoria, isn't
say.
it?
Yeah, it's just you can't cope with life. I don't know if it's like, I mean, my ADHD is out of control. I mean, I even forget to change my hormone patches, which then makes my PMDD worse. But when you're just your brain, it's like I need to go into a hole and not
Yeah.
and not to interact with anyone.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't
best for
handle it.
everyone if we just don't interact with anyone.
Yeah, exactly. Just hide.
So I think that's a really good way to describe it, to
Yeah.
be honest. And by the sounds of it, maybe depression is like a key part of your PMDD, and I know everyone has different symptoms. But so let's take it back then to the time when you first started to suspect that something more was going on than just your average PMS.
Yeah.
Tell us a
Well,
little bit about that.
I mean, the thing is that like PMS, PMDD was not on my radar at all. So essentially, as per pretty much every woman in the UK, if you have trauma, childhood trauma, what do you get diagnosed with? Borderline personality disorder. And because I've got such chronic health conditions, I have continuity with one GP. And I also sought private therapy for a borderline personality therapist specialist. Both of them were like, you do not have borderline personality disorder, but we don't know what's wrong with you. So it was like every month I was having borderline personality disorder episodes, but they weren't borderline personality episodes, it was PMDD. And then it was only obviously after sort of there was like a cascade of events that it was just like, as soon as I got my period, that was the light bulb moment, really. Like it wasn't on anyone's radar. It was just, once we figured it out, it was like, oh my god, that makes sense. And then my GP subsequently has diagnosed 4 other women just because of me, like because she's now been with me for 4 years through this journey, so now she knows what to look out for. And that's what you want from a medical professional, is just to learn.
100%, and for them to be okay, that I think I always stress this, that they're not going to know every condition.
Yeah.
And it's if they're willing to learn. My GP, the GP that diagnosed me, he was willing to learn, and I think that's what it's all about. And that's amazing that now from spending time with you and getting to know you, your GP has now been able to recognise it in 4 other patients. I think that's really, really amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about then how would you experience PMDD? What was your experience like? What were your symptoms?
So I was, to be honest, I was very I got in 2019. I basically became disabled overnight, and I got diagnosed with chronic pain, and that subsequently went my PMDD. When the trauma from that and just life going from being active to bedbound, all of that, it was like for 4 years I was overdosing nearly every month. Like, I was severely depressed, I was self-harming, I was in agony with my chronic pain, going to the hospital, being more traumatized because there was nothing physically actually wrong with me, but I was in so much pain. Again, that's PMDD, PME, all of those things, but no one knew what was wrong. It was just, we're supporting you through these crises, but they're short-term crises. So it was never, you need to be sectioned, for example, because it would eventually, I would only need 2 weeks of crisis, and then I would get better, and they would just think it was because of the crisis management. But it wasn't. It was just, I had my period.
There was no one actually thought, oh, hang on, is this connected to your
Yeah,
cycle?
it's not asked, and I don't understand how in no mental health assessments do they ask about your period. And
Yeah.
if one person had asked me, I would not have had to gone through what I went through. And I don't blame my therapist, and I don't blame my GP, because quite frankly, I've got complex health conditions, and we're managing mental health crisis after physical health crisis. So they probably didn't even have the time to research. But I do think it's down to the mental health professionals to go, hold on a minute, this girl is using our crisis services every single month. Is there a link? But there just doesn't seem to be any conversation about that. It's like foreign. It's completely foreign to them. Like,
Yeah. Which is really scary, to be honest, because the fact that you did go every month in this
yeah,
crisis and you used their services every month, and they didn't go, cycles tend to be a month long,
yeah,
so they didn't make that connection is really quite scary. But I know that you took matters into your own hands, and
yeah,
you made the really brave decision to section yourself.
yeah,
If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about that, because I'm sure it was terrifying for you. You know,
yeah,
what led you to that point, and how do you think it turned out for you?
yeah.
How was that experience?
I think so. 2022 was like a really rough year. Like, I lost my granny, who was like my main support system. And basically, because of my chronic pain, I have access to drugs like oxycodone. And essentially, that's what I was doing. I was overdosing on oxycodone. And that wasn't working. And I just remember one day going, I'm going to jump off a bridge. I'm just going to do it. I can't do this anymore. Like, you get to the point where no one is helping you. Everyone is telling you that you're crazy, that you're the problem. You're desperate to live, because that is the one thing about PMDD, is we feel every emotion. So when we're in our high, we want to live and we love life, but then when we're in
Yeah.
our low, we hate life. And I just turned on to my boyfriend, because my boyfriend at the time, he's said to me, if you commit suicide, I will never ever forgive you, because that's how bad it got. It got that bad that he would have to tell me that, because that's the only way I would stop myself.
Wow.
And I said to him, I was like, I need you to contact the home treatment team, and I need you to take me to Springfield Hospital, which is the mental health hospital in London. And he was like, yeah, I agree. And then I said to the home treatment team, I said, I can't do this anymore. And I don't know about you, but I always get so low the couple of days before my period. Like, that is the darkest, because I don't sleep. And they were like, yeah, we've been doing this crisis thing for 2 weeks. This was a particularly bad luteal phase. And then I was like, yeah, I'm going to section myself. And I did it. And luckily, I was still in the assessment unit. And then I got my period. And then it was like a light bulb moment, because then I spoke to my therapist. So then my therapist Googled, oh, then, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Period relieving menstrual symptoms. Oh my God. And then we had a therapy session, and we linked every single mental health crisis since 2019 back to my period.
Wow.
And I hadn't had a single mental health crisis outside of my luteal phase.
Wow.
And
How did that feel then to be able to, from 2019, to be
yeah,
able to recognize it as finally there's a
I
reason
mean,
for it?
like it was like a lot. It was like euphoria. I mean, the journey only just began, though. Do you know what I mean? You finally have got something that you know is wrong with you, but then again, I'm very lucky. My GP diagnosed me, but then it's battling to get borderline personality disorder removed. It's battling. It's not battling. I mean, I've been very lucky that my GP followed Chelsea and Westminster and then referred me when the treatment wasn't working. But that's still, 3 months testing every single treatment. And the mini pill made me worse. So you're not, it's like, oh, sorry, you're, you're almost, you go dark before it gets better. It almost gets worse. So as much as you've got this diagnosis, there's no research out there. It's only recently that we've started doing influencing and information's being on social media. So you're still very much alone, but you just have a name for what is going. I think it was only when I got stability with the hormones that's when I was like, hello, bloody Eula, like we made it. Do you know what I mean? Like that was the euphoria moment. But
I
apart
get
from that,
that.
yeah.
Because it's really like a bittersweet moment, isn't it? When you discover what
Yeah.
PMDD is, it's like, great, finally, I can put a name to the way I'm feeling. But then you actually explore the treatment pathways, which there are
Yeah.
none. And then you go, oh, this is going to be, I'm in for the long run here.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, I completely I really do get that. And you kind of touched on sort of the treatments that you've tried.
Yeah.
And I actually really sympathize with you because and we'll go on to sort of like the treatment that you've explored, but I sympathise with you because you're right. I think trying all these different types of treatments, it is trial and error. You don't know what's going to
Mhm.
work for you because it doesn't just work for everybody. It's not all one size fits all. And as part of that trial and error, it's really you get some really awful symptoms
Mm.
experiencing them. So I'm on SSRIs and the first 4 weeks of trying that was hell. It was the
Yeah.
worst my PMDD's ever been, and that's really scary because
Mhm.
you're already in a crisis. So tell us a little bit about your journey with treatment.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the problem with me is I again, this is very, very unique. I'm not a depressed person. So for me, I truly believe the reason why I was suicidal and self-harming so much was because of the antidepressants. Because again, like I'm very lucky, most GPs and most people won't treat PMDD if you're not popping antidepressants. But I weaned myself off and I was like, look, mate, proof's in the pudding. As soon as I've taken myself off these drugs, I'm not, I'm able to cope.
Hmm.
So I've tried multiple SSRIs over the years, and even venlafaxine, which I think is an SNRI or whatever. I've tried the mini pill. I've tried the combi pill. I've tried the Kylena and estrogen, and then I've tried the Mirena and estrogen. And now I just basically manage it with estrogen patches, the Mirena coil, and then for my mental health symptoms, I have a private prescription for medical cannabis. So
Got it.
again, in from 4 years ago when I'm popping diazepam and on antidepressants and all of these drugs, again, I've just been able to learn to manage it more holistically. And I think that, do you know what I mean? Our brains are messed up as it is. And I just think it was too much with the hormones and the antidepressants. I just think it didn't work for me. And that I think that's another massive problem with PMDD is what works for one person won't work for another. So we can't
100%.
even follow each other's sort of treatment plans because all of our treatment plans are different and unique to us.
a
And
hundred
it's
percent.
so hard
Yeah,
to
it's
figure it
really
out.
hard, and it's really hard that you have to go through all these trials and
Yeah.
tribulations. And I can imagine that you've learned a lot along the way, and you've experienced some awful things along the way.
Hmm.
By the sounds of it, you've at the moment that your PMDD is as most under control as it has
Yeah.
been. Can you tell us how your PMDD is now in comparison to you a year ago?
Yeah. So, I mean, my PMDD flares with trauma. So, anytime I have to go into hospital, I will have severe PMDD afterwards. But on a normal month, I'm fine. Like, I can function like a normal human being. I might be a little stressy. I might be a bit overthinking, anxious. I've not had any mental health support in nearly 2 years. I've not had a suicidal thought in over 2 years. I've not self-harmed in over 2 years. It's like the sun returns after a storm, is what I can describe. Like, it's even little things like I enjoy music again, and I never used to enjoy music. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I don't know, like the darkness has lifted. And on my bad months, I'm back, I'm back to my pit, but I'm not suicidal. And I think that's the biggest thing. I call them my danger symptoms, is I don't suffer danger symptoms. And if I don't suffer danger symptoms, then I take that as a win, because
Yeah.
that's all, to me, that's all I want. Because that's, to me, the worst feeling. It's feeling suicidal. Like, you don't want to wish that on anyone, especially when it's repeated. Like,
Yeah.
it's just
When you know it's
torture.
coming again. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
it's
It sounds
madness.
like, I mean, there's still a long way to go because you're still
Yeah,
experiencing bad symptoms, but I hope people listening to this get hope. People that
yeah,
were in your shoes a year ago, right now, I hope this gives them hope, because
yeah,
you've trialed many different methods of treatment, and yes, you might not 100% be over PMDD, but
yeah.
you've learned how to manage it as best
Mhm.
as you can, and you've reduced those really severe symptoms. And I think there's hope in that. So
Yeah,
I'm really pleased that you're able to sort of, get through day to day and not
yeah, yeah,
experience those suicidal thoughts, because ultimately that's the worst of it. So you've mentioned trauma, and you
yes,
believe that trauma may have triggered your PMDD. Can
yeah.
you share maybe a little bit more about the connection and how you've come to understand that?
I it's just on reflection. Like, I don't know. It's almost like, when you get diagnosed and you sort of like reflect on key moments in your life. And I know, obviously, in 2017, I basically went in for an operation, came back, and I was never the same, left in chronic pain. So that obviously was severely traumatic. And after that, my PMDD exploded. But there were other sort of traumatic events, like when I left domestic violence, and I see a pattern of behavior that I wasn't coping. And I now believe it's every time I go through a traumatic event, it will re-trigger my PMDD. And I think it was just in 2019, with the triggering of trauma, and then the life change, and then the just being sick in the NHS is a full-time job. I just think the PMDD just grew, do you know what I mean? And just got out of control, and it was like the crisis point. Um, but that's just my journey and my reflection of sort of like what I've experienced. But
Yeah.
again, we don't know because there's no research.
Yeah. Well,
We
and,
just
and,
have
and there's,
reflected.
yeah, and I think there's many different sort of causes of PMDD, but I think
Mm,
you're right. I think more research is coming out to sort of highlight the connection between
mm,
trauma and PMDD. So I think, us highlighting it now might hopefully
mm.
make someone realize, well, maybe that's what's caused mine. And I
Yeah,
think just being able to unpack that and
yeah,
discover that is a really great beginning
yeah.
of getting the treatment that you need. So I think it's really important to highlight that. And
And I think it's also, it helps people not, I know it sounds awful, but like they realize it's not their fault.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? I think it's so much easier to cope with something where if you have that sort of, it's not your fault that this has happened to you. This is just how your brain is coping with the
yeah,
change. And I
yeah,
think I think that's what women with PMDD, no one is telling us this isn't our fault. No
hmm,
one is telling us it's okay. It's just we're kind of told to lump it and live with it and deal with it. And I just think that's not right or
yeah.
okay.
I think you
And
bang on. I think it's important to say that as well. And like, I can't stress that enough. I think when you're in the midst of, the luteal phase, you just blame yourself, don't you? And you hate yourself, and the self-doubt is just like no other. And so for no one to give you that validation of, no, it's not your fault. You're not to blame for this. This doesn't define you is hard. So I think, yeah, that message is really important. And sort of, I suppose, similar to the fact that there are more connections being made between the trauma and PMDD, there's also more research coming out between autism and PMDD and ADHD and PMDD, and you've said that you've been screened for ADHD. Do you think there is a link then between neurodivergence and
100%.
right?
Oh my God, it's like, like the late, like it's like a light bulb. Like I feel like in the past 2 years, getting a diagnosis of potentially ADHD and PMDD has changed my life, because I finally know I'm not weird. I finally understand my brain. I finally know what is going on, which means I can cope and deal with it.
Hmm.
And I generally, the way my ADHD symptoms go haywire, I generally think I don't know. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm like convinced. I'm absolutely convinced.
No, it's interesting though. And what kind of symptoms then do you think connect the dots? Like, what is it? Do you
So
think is
I
significant then?
I mean, I think in terms of like the overwhelm. So the way I say it's like, with eight, like I get very sensory overload. So I cannot leave the house without my headphones, even sunglasses at times. I get very like rejection sensitivity. So like especially my neutral phase, if my friend's doing stuff without me, even though I'm not going to turn up, I still want to be invited.
Yeah,
And if I don't get, do you know what I mean? And I don't get invited, it's like, oh my God.
yeah.
So it's like those little ADHD traits. It's like, what else is it? I'm trying to think what else. It's like not forgetting, like, I don't know where anything is. I don't know where anything is. I forget to change my patches. I'm just like scatty, overwhelmed. It's just like everyone just says you're like a Duracell bunny going at 100, but you're just crying the whole time because you're so overwhelmed.
A really sad Duracell bunny.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Because I'm still trying to do everything. That's just it, almost just it feels like my brain doesn't stop. I don't know,
It feels
that's
like your
how I
brain's going
explain
to
it.
explode.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
I just don't feel in control.
I do really get that. I really get the rejection therapy. Is it rejection therapy?
It's like rejection sensitivity.
Rejection
Yeah.
sensitivity. Rejection therapy, no. But then I also really do get the general sensitivity. So I really struggle with like heightened noises and
Mm,
just I don't know, light as well. But I've only just started realizing that since all this information is coming out. I've not been diagnosed with ADHD,
mm,
but I do sort of resonate with some of the symptoms that
yeah.
connect the dots. So it's really interesting to learn more about it anyway, and
Yeah.
interesting to see that you've got that and you can definitely feel that connection.
Yeah. I mean, my ADHD diagnosis journey started because I was diagnosed with
Okay.
PMDD. So my GP sort of like we suspected it, but it was like, Jesus Christ, are we going to bloody add another diagnosis? And then I got diagnosed with PMDD, and it was like, oh, actually, we can't really now argue with this, that there is far too much high indication that you are probably on the spectrum. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. I'll just get diagnosed. But
Yeah.
so that's another thing. It's like, why are women with ADHD not being asked about their periods? Why are women with
Hmm.
autism not being asked about their periods? Because there is research. It's like, is 46% of women, I think, with
Yeah.
ADHD and higher with
Yeah.
autism.
I'm sure it was like in the 90s with autism, so or maybe 70s, I'm not sure, but it was an
Hmm.
incredibly high percentage anyway. So yeah, why aren't we being asked that kind of thing? Now, I really want to ask you about overreacting. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with the name. So if anyone's listening to this, overreacting is in ovaries,
Yes.
overreacting. Oh, it's just genius. I love it so much. But so you and Jodie have both run
Yes.
not
Yeah.
overreacting
Not to
together.
overreact. Yeah.
What's inspired you to start it? What do you hope it's going to bring to others, I suppose, going through similar
Yeah. So
experiences?
I think Jodie and I actually met online on TikTok,
Ah,
which is really weird. And yeah, she basically is at the beginning of her journey. So
okay.
she's currently fighting for a diagnosis. Um, I'm like currently trying to help her, sort of being told that PMDD doesn't exist, the classic spiel, and
Yeah.
I'm sort of at the end of my journey. So we
Yeah.
sort of thought it would be like quite interesting to show the different sides of like one person going through the crap that is trying to get a diagnosis of PMDD, but then one person showing how you can manage it, and that with
Mm,
therapy, hormones, life doesn't have to end and life is just beginning, it's just different. So it was just almost showing the positive side, that it's PMDD isn't all about darkness. Like I really try and emphasize that, like, I hate the dark bits, but I love the good bits. And that's my sort of input of the sort of page, is to try and keep everything positive and just try and give people hope that, it does get better, and just got to be patient,
I love that.
unfortunately.
That's so lovely though, and I think we do the our community does need hope because I think
Mm,
when you are in the depths of depression, and we do tend to go on Instagram, you need to see other people going, no, you can get over
mm,
this. There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And I
yeah,
think it's really interesting to have both of your perspectives as someone who's at the end of it and someone who's at the beginning because yeah, I'm sure many people can resonate with you, but also with Jodie's story too. So I think that's amazing. I'm sure many people have, and I'm sure you've probably spoken to many people online who have
yeah.
appreciated what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think another thing is, like, I'm also chronically sick, and I think that's sort of another way, is like to resonate with girls that have endo, or sort of the women's space on Instagram is one of the most purest communities I've ever been a part of. But I think same with the PMDD and with the chronic pain, it's just showing people that just because you've got an illness, just because you've got endo or pain, that life doesn't stop. It's just different. And I think so many people need that. They need just to see that your life doesn't end, like it's just beginning at diagnosis.
Yeah,
It's just,
because I think people often feel like PMDD defines them as well, don't they? And because our
yeah.
menstrual cycle is such a long time, it's like, God, this is half my life that I'm going to go
Mhm.
through this. But there are ways to alleviate those
Yeah.
symptoms, and there is hope. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's amazing what you both do, and I think
Thank
it's really
you. Thank
inspiring.
you. You're amazing too. I love
Oh, thank
you.
you. I love this so much. So what do you wish then someone had told you maybe when you were in the thick of it, before your diagnosis, before the self-harm, before the
Yeah.
hospital stay?
That it can be treated and it can be managed. You just have to
Uh-huh.
find what works for you. This is
Yeah,
not a chronic illness that doesn't have medication. This is a chronic illness that can be treated. It's not a death sentence. It's, like I said, it's just the beginning. That's how I view it. It's the beginning
yeah,
of a better journey, because now you've got like a name to it and you
yeah.
can
That's
treat
really,
it.
really nice.
Mm.
Oh, you're so inspiring. I feel emotional. But you're right, I do get that. I think people listening to this will just, it's about having that hope, isn't it? And that's
Mm.
what not overreacting is all about anyway, having that hope. But I'm sure people will feel sort of relieved to hear that you've come over the worst of it and you've found ways to support yourself.
Mm.
And yeah, don't get me wrong, there are going to be PMDD, there is no cure for it, and there are going to be times when it can consume you, but you
Mm.
you definitely over the worst of it, and that is, I mean, that's really incredible to hear.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, last question for anyone listening who, I don't know, just feels completely lost with their
Hmm.
PMDD, what would you want them to know?
Please talk to your friends. Like, I cannot tell you, as soon as I opened up that dialogue, like, I get sent PMDD reels on a daily from all of my female friends. They're all so clued up on their menstrual cycles. It
Yeah,
opens a dialogue, and I think in today's society, in general, we need to start being open about our mental health. And I think PMDD, unfortunately, is a gateway to that. And if I didn't have my girls rocking up at my door, making sure I'm showered, getting me out of my pit, I would not survive. But for
yeah,
so long, I didn't speak to anyone, and it did nothing but make it worse. So please talk to
uh,
people. That's what I would say. Is just find at least one person to talk to who can
yeah.
support you.
And I think the beauty of social media is that it doesn't have to be a real friend.
Yeah.
You can find, like, you and Jodie found each
Yeah,
other
me and Jodie
online.
found each other online. Exactly.
Same
It
with
does.
you and I. Like, I think, and I'll encourage people to reach out to Not Overreacting and give them a follow because that's how you find the best people. Like, honestly, I think a lot of the people that I speak to in my times of crisis are just people that have
Mhm.
PMDD, and I've only ever met them online,
Yeah.
and it's through the PMDD community. So I think tapping into that if you don't feel able to speak to somebody in your current
Yeah.
circle is really, it's
Yeah.
life-saving, isn't it?
And the Facebook pages, I'm sorry, whoever runs those Facebook pages, geez Louise. And that goes for your partners, that goes for your friends. They, like, the IMPD Facebook pages. They've got separate ones, and I find them the most safest space to be able to talk. I don't know, like, something about the women's health space. I don't know. I just find it so pure. Like, it's not
Yeah.
been like it's just women supporting women, and I think it's
Yeah.
just so nice. There's no
Yeah.
toxicity. It's all very welcoming.
100%. I find it so beautiful. It's literally just women wanting to share their insights and like help each other.
Yeah.
But just continue doing what you're doing with Not Overreacting
Yeah.
and just generally advocating for people with PMDD, because
Yeah.
your voice is like really, I know it's helping so many people. So
Thank
just thank you
you.
for everything that you do.
No worries, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.